I was standing in the middle of my great-grandfather's ranch, watching members of the Edgewater Bluffs HOA pop champagne over a shiny ribbon cutting for a private railway line they built straight through my cattle pens. "There's nothing you can do about it," smirked Miranda Gaines, Karen number 1, in every meaningful way. But that's the moment they triggered the trap my family buried a century ago. Literally, they didn't read the deed. Now I own the entire HOA. The railway. Their homes. Foreclosure was the kindest option. How we get here? Buckle up. This isn't petty. This is generational revenge. A month earlier, I was fixing a storm-damaged fence on the west side of the ranch when I noticed a cluster of well-dressed people nosing around the perimeter. Clipboards, hard hats, work boots far too clean. I figured they were county surveyors checking the old easement. Happens. But the longer they lingered, the more I felt something was off. One woman, tall, icy eyes, and a haircut sharp enough to cut fence wire, was clearly in charge. She pointed at my cattle pens and made a slicing gesture with her hand. That motion, I knew it. That was the universal sign for bulldoze. I strolled over and tipped my hat. Before I could ask what was going on, she shoved a folder in my face and introduced herself. Miranda Gaines, president of the Edgewater Bluffs Homeowners Association. For context, Edgewater Bluffs is a soulless gated community that sprouted 5 years ago like mold on the edge of my family's land. Cookie-cutter McMansions, wine-tasting moms, designer dogs, and now, apparently, a private railway line. Miranda, Karen 1, beamed as she explained the HOA's bold new initiative. A private commuter line to the tech campus 20 miles out. Property values would soar, she said. Unfortunately, the route had to pass through this. She gestured vaguely at the field where my black Angus were peacefully chewing their cud. "You mean my ranch?" I said. She tightened her smile. "Temporary construction easement. Perfectly legal. You'll be compensated." Compensated. Like my great-grandfather's land was a hotel minibar. I asked if they consulted the deed or even looked at a county map. She said their lawyers handled everything. Then she patted my shoulder like I was a child lost in a library. "It's best not to get involved. These projects can be complicated." "Complicated," I said. "That's my specialty." 2 weeks later, the bulldozers showed up, tore through a quarter-acre of prairie grass, and plowed a gravel bed 12 feet deep into my grazing field. Miranda number 2 and number 3 were clapping like tourists at a zoo exhibit. I didn't say a word, just stood on my porch with coffee, watching, because I remembered something my grandfather told me while whittling under that same porch beam. "One day, someone will come knocking. Want what we got. But don't worry, we buried the answer." At the time, I thought he was waxing poetic. Turns out he meant it. That night, I climbed up into the attic, shoved aside dusty boxes until I found the old leather-bound chest. Beneath brittle papers and sepia photos was a file marked Redfern Land Trust, 1923 revision. Inside a clause: if any industrial construction, rail, utility, or commercial was built on Parcel 9B without explicit written permission from the Redfern Trust, ownership of all connecting properties using that access would revert to the trust after 30 days of unchallenged encroachment. Parcel 9B? Exactly where their track sat. And no one had asked me. Next morning, I drove to the county records office. MS. Janice, who'd known my family since the Eisenhower administration, helped me dig through the HOA's filings. After an hour, she let out a low whistle. They didn't file the variance properly. You could roast them with this. "That's the plan," I said. Back at the ranch, construction ramped up. Karen 1 sent out a compliance officer who fined me for non-conforming livestock odor. On a cattle ranch, they were trying to drown me in paper cuts, but I was building a paper guillotine. I recorded everything: busted fences, blocked feed paths, every smarmy quote about redeveloping backwards land. Then, 3 days before the 30-day deadline, we struck. A certified letter from the Redfern Trust attorney, my old college roommate Rosie Valdez, hit their inbox. The letter stated that due to the encroachment and under trust terms, their access infrastructure now triggered a full reversion. Failure to vacate in 72 hours would result in legal transfer of the connected land. Rosie included the original clause, notarized lineage records, and documented encroachment. Next morning, I saw Miranda outside the fence on her phone, screeching like the tracks had betrayed her. They had no idea what they triggered, because they never asked what they were standing on. 2 days later, I walked into the HOA meeting. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Ron, the treasurer and possibly the only decent board member, invited me. I let them babble about vinyl fences and community garden budgets until they reached external legal challenges. Should we hear from the opposing party? Ron asked. Miranda tried to laugh it off. That's when I leaned forward and said, the misunderstanding is whether you'd prefer to forfeit the rail line or the whole subdivision. Silence. Ron flipped through the folder I handed him. Documents, court notices, trust records. His eyes got real big. Someone asked what it meant. It means, I said, you built your dream neighborhood on a legal landmine. And it just blew up. Karen once sputtered. Ron asked if they could fight it. Sure, I said, if you've got a few $1,000,000 and a decade to spare. Or, we negotiate. They didn't even get the chance. While they scrambled, Rosie filed papers to acquire surrounding properties. We called every family the HOA had bullied, bought back their homes. Meanwhile, Karen came to my gate with a deputy and a citation for dust runoff. Semi-tractor kicked up dirt near their walking trail. The trail was on my land. I let them walk in, then handed the deputy a trespass notice. He turned beet red. Karen blew a gasket. I played the video of her laughing. There's nothing you can do about it. Turns out there was. A week later, the board crumbled. Ron resigned. 2 others tried to blame Miranda for everything. Homeowners panicked. Property values plummeted. Rumors spread. Redfern Trust was reclaiming everything. And while they argued about bylaws, I uncovered something else. The railway cut across a protected hawk habitat. My grandfather had filed a conservation easement decades ago. Rosie reported it. The state environmental agency showed up fast. Then Rosie found the kicker. The HOA's beautification tax fund was misused. Wine tours in Napa. Retreats labeled enrichment. We reported it. The IRS opened case. Miranda tried to settle. Offered to name the shuttle stop after my grandfather. I said no. Then came the courthouse hearing. The judge barely blinked. 3 violations, he said. Charter dissolved. Just like that, the HOA had no power. No finis. No patrols. Just chaos. The next morning, I installed a locked gate on the only access road. Permit only. Miranda called, trying to sound nice. I offered $500 annual access permits. She called it extortion. I called it a discount. Residents called too. Some were angry. Others remorseful. One guy offered pie. I declined the pie, but let him mow the pasture. With no board left, every homeowner had to deal with me. One-on-one. Miranda tried to sue over emergency access. Rosie showed how we built a legal fire lane. Karen tried to say it flooded during rain. I mailed her a weather forecast and rubber boots. Then we found gold, a clause tied to commercial use on HOA land. Weddings, wine events, hot yoga, illegal. We filed to seize the clubhouse. Miranda screamed at officials. One deputy reminded her she was trespassing. I hosted an open house at the newly renamed Redfern Hall. Free coffee, live music, a plaque above the urinal, Karen's Folly. And the tracks? I repurposed them, partnered with a farm co-op, turned it into a produce rail line. Miranda showed up one last time. Quieter. She asked what it would take for peace. I handed her a folder, restitution options for the people she hurt. The next day, she was gone. Left behind, a photo of the ribbon cutting. On the back, scribbled, I never thought you'd win. I wasn't done winning. Rosie found the final piece. Miranda had been taking kickbacks through a shell company owned by her cousin. Sweetheart deals. Corruption. We turned it all over to the state AG. Investigation launched. Assets frozen. Miranda vanished. Edgewater Bluffs became a cautionary tale. Property values tanked. News vans lined up. The Redfern Trust held steady. We launched a buyback program. Met with every family. Fair deals. Some stayed. Some left. All left better than they arrived. The clubhouse became a community center. Kids painted murals. Veterans held meetings. We held our first fall festival. Someone carved a pumpkin that looked like Miranda. The ranch breathed again. I rode the perimeter. Cattle calm. Land steady. My grandfather's words echoed. Never sell. Never bow. Always fight smart. I didn't just keep the land. I restored it. And poetic justice? It had one more laugh. Miranda's house was seized. We bought it, turned it into a horse stable, called it Redemption Ranch. One of the manure carts? Named it the Miranda Express. Later that winter, I visited my grandfather's grave. Brought bourbon. Told him the whole tale. I could almost hear him laugh. The ranch that beat the HOA. Not just a story, a legacy. And the tracks they laid to cut us in half. We turned them into a bridge.